Hello YouTube and fellow Star Wars collectors! On this episode of Toys Are the Way, we'll be taking a look at the latest addition to the Vintage Collection Deluxe Figure offerings, Cobb Vanth from The Mandalorian. So welcome back everyone. Once again we are taking a look at another character who is highly requested within the community and we're finally adding to our collections, and it is Cobb Vanth in his Mandalorian Armor. Definitely a character that many of us have been wanting to see added to the line for quite some time now, and it would have been great to see this figure ages ago when we first saw him in The Mandalorian Season 2, but you know, I guess we had to wait a little bit, and finally we're getting this figure. Now, it's not exactly 100% perfect in my opinion, but I will say that I'm liking it a lot more than the initial release when, you know, we saw promotional images of this figure. Definitely not too bad, but I'm always looking to upgrade my figures and make them the best that I can possibly make them. But with all that being said, let's take a closer look at the packaging and figure. Taking a look at our vintage style packaging, we have the Star Wars and Mandalorian logo nicely displayed up top, followed by Cobb Vanth Mandalorian Armor on a yellow name pill color. We have a fantastic image of the character looking really great in that bar in Mos Pelgo, and I've just got to say that this is a really nice image for this card with the Kenner logo down below, and just all things looking really fantastic in my opinion. And then we have this nice all new from the ground up figure looking really good with a number of accessories in this larger type bubble. Now this is a deluxe figure, and this is the first time that we are seeing this type of card back for deluxe figures in the vintage collection. It's a little bit wider than a standard vintage collection card back, which is still not my favorite, but it is much better than those boxes that we were getting where you can't even see the action figure in it. But I still do think that Hasbro needs to work on this maybe, and I would prefer it to be closer to that, you know, standard card size, but for the most part, I think this is looking pretty good in my opinion. On the back, he is VC 343 in the line, Cobb Vanth Mandalorian Armor, and we have a small description of the character, followed by the Vintage Collection logo, and then additional images of the card and figure. So it's quite a relief to finally see Cobb Vanth make his way onto a Vintage Collection card back and into our collections in general, and I'm definitely very excited to add this one to my Mandalorian carded display. Taking a look at Cobb Vanth out of the packaging, the figure resembles Timothy Oliphant quite well. Hasbro has done another great job here with the sculpt, and just take a look at that detail in the hair right there. That looks really good. Everything on his beard looks great. The only thing I will say about the hair in general is it's kind of just one flat gray color, and it could use a little bit more paint applications to give it some depth and like variation. But other than that, looks very awesome. Taking a look at the rest of the figure, his eyebrows and paint applications just look really clean, and overall I think this is a really nice portrait, so they absolutely nailed it with this one. And if you would like to put on the helmet, all you simply have to do is pop off the head and take the Mandalorian helmet, or you know, Boba's, and simply put it on the peg, like so, and there you go. You have Cobb Vanth with the helmet on. Now, I will say I have a little bit of a problem when it comes to this helmet. It's oddly a new sculpt, which is, you know, always a little weird because we do have, you know, versions of this helmet. So we have the original VC-186 helmet, which of course had, you know, kind of like a head already sculpted in there. They've never used this for anything else other than Boba Fett figures. And then we do have, you know, the Jango Fett figure that we kind of got recently, which is a swappable head as well, and it is much more proportionally sized, like correctly. Like look how narrow the Cobb Vanth one is, and it doesn't have an articulated rangefinder like this one here. Why they did not use this helmet, I just don't know. It's very perplexing to me, and yeah, it looks okay on Cobb, but when you compare it to other versions that we have, it just looks a little weird. It's very narrow, and I just don't understand why they did that. Not to mention the non-articulated rangefinder is such a bummer for me. Cobb Vanth even uses that in the show, so why would we not get that type of helmet? So that is definitely a big miss for me, and I wish Hasbro would have, I don't know, given us the proper helmet. Taking a look at the articulation and accessories, Cobb Vanth comes with quite a bit, which is nice to see for a figure on a card. So he does come with the flame effects, which we've seen with a number of different figures. Originally we saw this with Boba Fett from the Book of Boba Fett. We've seen these with Dark Troopers and just a number of other Mandalorian figures. So that's cool to see that included here. He does have the jetpack, which is actually the same one that we saw with that Tatooine Boba Fett. and it does have a firing rocket, which is pretty cool. It doesn't have the little flame effect like we saw with that deluxe figure, that deluxe Boba Fett, but I don't really need that, so at least it fires, which is pretty cool. And then you can see some of that detail they put on here. This is just pretty much a paint application for that welding patch right there, but it would have been nice to see a little bit more texture there, because it does look like a piece of, steel or something that's been like welded on there, and this is just a paint application, but not a deal breaker in my opinion. And then taking a look at him, he's got his blaster here and his rifle. The rifle is a bit of a shame because it has no paint application on it whatsoever. He does have like wrappings on the barrel and the handle, which are not painted whatsoever, so that's a little bit of a shame. I will probably paint those myself and just, give it a little bit more life. Taking a look at his blaster pistol, same thing, no paint applications, it's just molded plastic color. It does fit in his hand very well with that trigger finger, and then of course it can go into this holster very nice and snug, so you will not be losing that. So all things pretty good there. And then taking a look at the articulation, he's got those new style barbell hips, swivel at the thigh, pretty much everything we want to see on our vintage collection figures these days, with the rocker ankles. He's got great mobility in his arms, which go up and are not hindered by the soft plastic armor. He's got ball joints everywhere, and then hinges at the wrist, which is always great for somebody who's shooting a pistol and kind of a gunslinger. So that's all great to see. Now, I was not originally a fan of this soft plastic armor which goes over him, and it does look much better now that I have it in hand, but I'm still not a huge fan because look at that gap right there. That's not how it looked in the show, and it's just it could be better. And then taking a look at this soft plastic, it's got pretty good detail, but you get a little bit more extra detail with those hard plastic molded pieces that we normally see on figures. But we're going to take a closer look at this and something I've done in just a moment. But taking a look at the helmet and its articulation's got some pretty good range right there. The jetpack, of course, is removable if you're not familiar with this figure. And then this hose is also removable. So you can take that off like so, which allows us to remove the armor. So let's do that real quick and take a look at some things. So here you have the figure with the Mandalorian armor removed, and it is pretty cool that Hasbro is trying to get us the martial look as well, kind of in a timely manner. That pretty much all they need here is the lower arms to be sculpted and that tooling with no gauntlets, and then we pretty much have a martial version, because this right here is just a clip system, so you can take that Mandalorian knee armor off and he's pretty much good to go. Now the only thing I will say is it's going to be a little weird to have Cobb Vanth walking around with a giant peg hole in his back. That just doesn't look great in my opinion, but maybe Hasbro has some kind of solution for that in the future. And then here's the soft plastic armor, which is pretty soft. And yeah, to put that on you simply have to take off the head again, simply put that on. You will then take this hose, plug it into this peg back here, and then take the soft plastic scarf, put it on, and then re-pop on his head. So kind of cool. I'm liking it a lot more than when I originally saw those promo images. I was just like, this seems like a cheap way of getting us Armor Vanth, but really you're trying to get us the Marshall Vanth. But more and more I look at it, it's okay. But I will say I have some issues with it, and let's take a look at something I've already customized. So here we have the Vintage Collection version on the left-hand side compared to my recent custom, which uses the VC-186 Return of the Jedi Boba Fett upper body. And now I will say, I originally didn't like this figure when we first saw the promo images. I do like it a lot more now, but when compared to my custom, you can see, it definitely doesn't look quite as good. This plastic just looks a little bulky, and I don't know, something about this is a bit more form-fitting and just feels like a nice proper figure. Now, I will say that this is not an easy process or custom. I may share a video with you guys in the future, but yeah, it's a bit tricky. So this is actually a hard plastic here, which is frustrating to work with, to say the least. It's glued at the seam, so you pretty much have to break that apart, and it's a bit messy, so not something I recommend as a good time. But it does look really good here. I did have to cut Cobb Vanth in half and then kind of make a Frankenstein of a figure here, but I think it looks pretty good. Now originally when I saw this Vanth figure, I thought, hey, why isn't Hasbro using this upper body? give him the shirt look, cut it at mid-torso like we've seen at other figures, and then maybe you can just like plop this on. I kind of now see why they didn't do that. It might have required new tooling. This just didn't like kind of vibe with what they had going on. So, you know, I can forgive them for what they did, and they've done a pretty decent job with this figure. And it did allow me to make this custom, you know. All this stuff they supplied me made this possible. But I will say I'm very happy with this custom. I need to weather up this armor, figure out how to, you know, kind of put these tubes on. I might glue them to the back rather than pegging them up here or something. But yeah, just a fun custom that I wanted to share with you guys, and a pretty nice upgrade if I do say so myself. And then one last thing I wanted to bring up with you guys, and I want to know your personal opinion, is which helmet do you think looks better? The original VC 186 Boba Fett helmet on the right, or the new Cobb Vanth one on the left? I definitely think I like the old one better. I just don't understand why the new one's so narrow. It seems to be a problem we see with the vintage collection sometimes with Boba Fett's, or just Mandalorians and inconsistent helmets. My friends, you have a perfect helmet. It is the one that we've been seeing with the Fleet Commander, Jango Fett. Just use that helmet, please, because I don't know what's going on with this Cobb Vanth. It just looks a little odd. So, unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to paint this older helmet on the left just to give it all that weathering. And yeah, another project for me to have to tackle. But I will say that it looks so much better, so I think I'm going to have to use that instead. From Season 2 of The Mandalorian to the Book of Boba Fett, Cobb Vanth, the Marshal of Mos Pelgo, has certainly been a heavy hitter on many TVC fans' wish lists and fan polls. The character originally debuted in The Mandalorian back in October of 2020, which seems like a galaxy far, far away. And now fast forward to September of 2024, and we have VC 343 finally added to the vintage collection. Cobb Vanth comes fully loaded with all the modern advancements we have seen in the vintage collection lately. New style barbell hips, rocker ankles, and an abundance of hinges and ball joints will allow Vanth to take down any and all threats on the streets of Mos Pelgo. Furthermore, the Mandalorian Armor accessories included with this release are adorned with a decent amount of silver paint applications, and despite a few perplexing decisions, the figure as a whole looks great. The only thing I will say is that the new Boba Fett helmet sculpt looks extremely odd and seems very unnecessary, given that there were far better options for Hasbro to use for this highly anticipated release. Regardless, it's a relief to finally have this character make their way into our collections and shelf displays. I hope you've enjoyed this video and taking a look at this latest addition to the vintage collection, Cobb Vanth from The Mandalorian. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And don't forget to smash a like on this video and subscribe if you're new to the channel. It really helps and is always greatly appreciated. Thanks everyone, and may the Force be with you.